Welcome, everybody. Today we have an exciting episode. I've got a great guest for you. We are going to be talking about the impact of education and children and work-life balance of parents that has been happening throughout the coronavirus pandemic. So today with us, we have Rebecca Pastore. She is a CEO and founder of Carefree Organic Skincare, and she's also the mother of a 4-year-old who is in preschool, a 7-year-old who was in first grade, and a 9-year-old who was in third grade during the whole pandemic. So we're going to get into a lot of details and talk about some exciting things about how this has been affecting people, because it is a big issue. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to have you. I think this is going to be a really interesting topic. I'm excited to talk to you about this. All right. So before coronavirus happened, let's start out with the before. So you're working basically full time. You work from home. You're raising 3 boys. You have a family. What was your typical day and week like before coronavirus happened? So let's get into like January. What's a typical week like for you, or a typical day?
Busy, crazy, chaotic, because any mom will tell you that life with children, any amount of children, is intense, especially 3 little boys. And running a company almost as a one-woman show, and trying to squeeze in a little bit of self-care in there all at once and take care of the home. Everyone has their own responsibilities, but it was a lot. It was busy, but it was fun and doable. And I basically get up at 6, bring the big boys to school, get them ready and sent off, entertain my preschooler. Then I had this magical 9 to 11 window of which I worked, which consisted of shipping orders, gathering orders, retail runs, production pickups, client support, marketing, a lot of different things. And I would also use that time to exercise if I found the time, clean up after them, and then I'd have to go pick up my littlest, entertain him the rest of the day until the big boys came home, homework, and you name it. So basically those 2 morning hours a day were precious to me, and that's when I got my things done.
So your kids were involved in school. So all 3 of your kids were in school. All 3 of your kids were doing activities after school, whether that be Cub Scouts or sports or anything. So what did school and those activities mean for your children? Was that an important part of their lives?
Yes, it was an important part of all of our lives. As busy as it was, we really took it for granted in some ways. Soccer tonight, Cub Scouts this night, entertaining them, making play dates and whatnot, felt like a lot. It was a big job, but we're missing it so much that it meant everything to them. The socialization, their classes, their teachers, they just really, really loved school, and they loved all their activities and miss them very much.
So we start out with this, we start hearing about coronavirus in the news, and it gets, all of a sudden, there's like this earlier mid-March where we get this, some people are calling it like it was like Friday the 13th. It was like this huge day where all of a sudden, like, it just seemed like all schools across the nation, businesses shuttered. And at first, when this was shut down, we thought that this was we were treating it like a snow break or a hurricane coming, like, we're going to be off for a few weeks. So there wasn't really any prep for the school at that point for a lot of schools. How did the kids react to this break? And did you have to talk to them about social distancing? How do you talk to a 7 and 4-year-old about what did they think?
Well, when this all first happened, I was hesitant to say anything leading up to it, in the weeks leading up to it, until we knew for sure something was going to be affected school-wise. And, my oldest was signed up for a talent show. He was in 3rd grade, and he was going to do a ukulele song. He was getting so brave for it, and we were all really excited for things like that. But as it crept closer to Friday the 13th, March 13th, we swiftly realized that things were going to change pretty drastically. So we definitely had some chats. But it's funny because they actually came home with the topic themselves, and they heard a lot of rumors in school. My middle child thought coronavirus was a monster. My oldest was worried that he would catch it just from, being outside. Sure. And things like that. So we had big talks about the reality of what was going on, try to calm their fears, ease their nerves, but also tell them, the reasoning things were going to happen pretty swiftly. We didn't have any closure at school because while they canceled the events such as the talent show, The county actually didn't cancel or close school. It was the state that ended up doing it for us. So they didn't get to say goodbye to anybody, pack up their belongings, or anything. So fast forward to when we, the reality, we didn't talk up to them about social distancing at first because we were able to keep them home with us. And we're very, very grateful. We have a lifestyle that we were both able to stay home with the kids. We didn't have any, work requirements outside of the home. So we were able to stay put for a while and do all of our outdoor activities pretty fun and easily. We added, backyard camping when the weather got nice. We added hiking trails in the neighborhood that we hadn't done prior, brother sleepovers in the living room, movie nights, and made the most fun of it we possibly could. As for when we started seeing people outside a little bit here and there, then yes, we did talk about social distancing. But again, we didn't want to instill fear into them, just a little bit of the reality of what we're trying to do and why.
Sure. So once we found out that this was going to be a permanent thing, potentially months longer, or probably the whole school year, we were still at that point wondering, is this going to be this whole school year? How did the school react? Did your school that your kids go to, did the preschool or the elementary school have a plan? Did other schools, from talking to other parents, was there a plan at first, or was this kind of like just thrown on the school? Like, did they know what to do?
I think we can nationally say everyone was winging it just a little bit. From knowing other teachers and having family in other regions of the country, sure. California, up north, a lot of things were being done differently, and everyone was clearly doing their best in an unprecedented situation. Some schools just threw it all on the kids immediately. Some didn't hear from their teachers for a couple of weeks, or the school system at least. We are very thankful. We're part of a year-round school. So after that first initial week of shock and kind of settling into our new reality, my boys had a 3-week break off. And rather than push through that, the school honored that 3-week break for all the teachers, and all the students said, look, take your break, let us do our thing, and we'll be in touch following the 3-week break. And at first I was like, oh no, I need something school-wise to do with them. But as we got into our routine, I was really, really grateful for it. We were able to go to the beach and do, take hikes at a battleground park and do a lot of different things while learning incidentally, which was really, really fun for us. And, we took advantage where we could.
How did the kids react when you told them you're not going back to school, you're going to be taking your class from home? How did they react to that?
Once we started the distance learning, they didn't love it. My oldest, his personality and age probably enabled him to get the work done with less than an hour and a half a morning and then have his free time. My 7-year-old was more of I learned every day with them that, he needed his own space. He needed to be with me alone. I had to look over his shoulder. I had to give him tons of breaks. We had to just do what we could, and I didn't want to force it all on them. And he would get the most emotional. And then the youngest was entertaining himself half the time, which I'm sure a lot of moms can relate to ages, 4 and younger, of just kind of a free for all. And I'm lucky that he wasn't kind of a toddler getting into everything. He was old enough to kind of play on his own while we were doing this. But, he was happy enough, but definitely missing his friends. They all missed their friends greatly. Whenever they had a Zoom call with the class, they just lit up. They were kind of sad afterwards, I noticed. But during the calls, they were so happy. And a lot of the apps we used through the school enabled them to make and share their own videos. And it was really sweet to hear what they had to say about missing their class. I held off on discussing, well, you're not going back this school year. That was it, until we knew for sure, because I knew they'd be sad, and I made it as positive as possible, but they were. All 3 of them took it a little differently, reacted a little differently, but they were sad. They couldn't believe that their grade was just done and they were moving on to the next grade. Sure. For sure.
So what was the class like? Like was there work to do by themselves? Was this online where they would meet? You mentioned kind of both of those. Was it just a combination? How often did they meet with their class or teacher live via Zoom?
Us personally, it varied by grade. My oldest met weekly. He only met with his whole class in the very beginning and the very end, but he did small group Zooms every week, and they would incorporate a scavenger hunt or, charades. And it was really, really sweet. And like I said, he lit up and loved it. So that was a little more for fun and connection. And his teacher was always great with doing a chapter read aloud and uploading it to YouTube for the kids if they were missing that aspect of it, but not required. And my middle child Zoom was every other week. And again, it was only a couple of times with the whole class. It was more of small groups. And he loved it as well. And that was more for fun, fun learning. But in between all of that and daily, basically we were given a weekly calendar.
Okay.
And there were daily activities and weekly activities, and daily things were expected. Warm-ups they got used to. Some apps they loved, some apps they didn't. And they also had to do their weekly work. They could do at any pace that was expected to be completed by the end of the week. And usually we could tackle it all. Some weeks were a little more emotional than others, and we kind of stepped back, and the teachers were wonderful at never, ever pressuring the kids at all. It was just a lot of apps. You had to fully figure out, the login and saving the login on each different devices we used for each different kid, which we were very lucky to have to use. But it was a lot of apps, a lot of all over the place.
Now, were these like, could you do everything from the computer, or did you have to use a phone to access the apps?
No, either or.
Okay, so
either or.
Now, what did the district do did your school reach out, or your district, in case if you did not have a computer or something like that, so that you could participate?
We did. They did. I'm sorry. They did. They sent us an email asking if anyone needed a Chromebook, which the kids were already familiar with using. It required a pickup, but I was told that there might be children that didn't have any devices to use at home. They might not have one for every child. So we refrained and avoided that altogether.
Sure.
We used a laptop, a desktop, a phone, iPad or tablet worked too. And we just used what we could and kind of got the feel of, oh, this activity works much more easily on a phone when we want to use our finger to draw on something. And the Zoom calls work much better, when we're using our computers with the cameras kind of thing.
Sure.
So we figured it out as we went along.
And I know that for kids that didn't have the technology, that a lot of the internet providers were providing free internet during school days for those children. So it seems like between that and your district, those kids who might not have everything were probably at least covered a bit. So did this involve a lot of your time? Like, did you have to, how much time did it take you as a parent to guide your kids through that? Because normally they're in school, they weren't. Did you have to facilitate this process?
Yes, it took, I dedicated a lot of my time, hours a day between the feeding, the entertaining, keeping them active. And I'm lucky enough that I could put my business to the side, had it fully prepped and do as minimal work as possible for it while keeping it alive and steady. But could I do, anything creatively that I had hoped to do? No. The kids became my full priority. Their schooling became my full priority. And once they got into the distance learning after their break, I made sure that their weekdays looked different than their weekends. So we had something to celebrate at the end of the week. And, it was just a whole nother readjustment.
So do you think that your kids actually learned during this period? Do you think they advanced and got anything from this? Or do you think they just kind of stayed at the same place they were? Do you think there was any learning gained?
Some learning, not much, not to the fault of anyone or anything, but I really liked how my middle child's first grade team rotated teaching the new material and the lessons between them, pre-recorded, not live, so there wasn't pressure to be there at a certain time. And he would have to listen and watch them and then do the work. Now, was he engaged as if he was in class? Not at all. He for whatever reason, he thrived in the classroom for the same type of lessons he did not here. So I had to be over his shoulder, helping him, learning it with him, discussing it with him. And so that took a lot of time and effort. But did he learn it? Yeah, he picked up on it, thankfully. Can every child do that for every topic this way? I doubt it. And my oldest in third grade, there were a few new things. You know, I went over fractions together with him, improper fractions that were new to him, and he picked it up pretty well. But again, I had to be right there on top of him. And I can't imagine what full-time teachers with children or full-time working mothers outside of the home or even remotely would do when they couldn't do that. So in our case, yeah, they learned some, as much as we could, but I think a lot was review, especially because it was the end of the school year.
Sure.
I don't think they learned a whole lot of new anyway.
So how did the kids react to missing like big milestones, like not being able to say goodbye to their class at the end of the school year? There was no more end of the school year parties. You had a preschooler who would have been graduating preschool. That's a big occasion for preschool kids. Did the school do anything for them to help them like get over that a little bit, or what kind of things happened? How did the kids react?
We found our own closure, and the school definitely helped that in all different ways. I'll start with my preschooler. He was 4 at the time. He didn't know what he was missing. He didn't know what a pre-K graduation was. Mom did, and it's my baby, so I was sad about it. So when graduation day, back up to picking his stuff up at school, we did this drive-through on a rainy day. The teachers had masks on. He covered his mouth, like just as a reaction, got his things through the car, and it was not great. It was not a fun, happy goodbye. Mm-hmm. This was earlier though. Come graduation day at the end of May though, I put on that graduation cap and gown. We drove to a school alone and took the big boys, dressed up, and got some family pictures. And it was really sweet because we all reminisced that my boys had been going there for 7 years. They were really proud of him and happy for him. They posed for these pictures. We talked about the good times we had there, said our goodbyes, found a lot of closure. And then later that afternoon, the director of the preschool surprised him with a sweet, sweet gift and said goodbye. And his teacher was in touch also and had given a gift earlier as well. So from there, we've done outside, very distant play days with his closest from his class, swimming and whatnot in the pool. And that all, it's helped, and it's been enough for him, thankfully. My 2 olders, they ended with Zoom calls and a couple different ways they did a visit. My oldest teacher had us swing by her home, and we were able to give her a gift. And she had this class safari Zoom party with everybody on the last day. And my middle child's teacher surprised him by letting me know, of course, and came with all the assistant teachers that work with him also, and brought him gifts, said goodbye. And I mean, it just meant the world to him. So in that way, it really, really, really helped. It helped us all, I think. So yeah, they did amazing.
So now we're currently in summer. We're in July at this point, and the state that we're in, cases are rising, and in many states that's happening. Has the school notified you about the fall? Are there any options? What have you heard about fall so far?
Oh, the fun rumors before an official announcement. I've heard a lot. One thing I will say is that some other elementary schools in our district, the traditional calendar, not the year-round, already have done virtual kindergarten assessments, have already planned their open houses. Our school, I have not heard a peep from in that regard. And I think they're probably wisely, even though we're ready to plan, we are ready to go, I think they're wisely waiting it out until they get something official. Why plan so much when so much can change, especially with our rising numbers? What we have heard is from the governor, 3 different options, A, B, and C. A is, some cleaning, sanitizing protocols in place, but you go every day, full time to school. B is a hybrid schedule, part remote, part in person. And C is online only. My personal theory in that delaying an announcement about it is that our numbers, like you said, are rising so much that is now the time to make a decision based on those numbers. Or since a mask mandate happened recently, can the numbers go down enough that we all feel comfortable doing an A or B tier But what do I know? It's just a wait and see.
So, what do you think if you had a choice right now based on what you're seeing? What do you think is the best course of action for your kids, and what are some other what are other parents, what are some of the things you're hearing that other parents might be doing?
It varies greatly. Some are all in for going back full time, use the cleaning protocols and hope for the best, learn to live with this. Some are, and most think that the B hybrid is near impossible
Sure.
for, obvious reasons, working mothers and fathers and whatnot. And in the hybrid schedule, would children be going to daycares in between and just getting more exposure elsewhere? See, the remote learning, I've heard, obviously people with compromised immune systems or health issues, or living with grandparents that might have those health issues, are like, no, only C. And the guess and feeling of a lot is no matter what is chosen, that C might be an option for those who need it anyway, which I think is really important. Me personally, I'm queen of seeing way too many sides of things at the same time, and it can drive me bonkers. So I am trying to be patient and waiting. But I would love more than anything for my children to be back in the classroom in some capacity for mental health. Yeah, for learning, for sure, but for their mental health, for back to normalcy. However, that's if we physically feel comfortable with the numbers that are happening by then. In a month, they're supposed to start August 4th. If the mandates of what they're going to be doing in school sounds reasonable and makes sense. And if not, I'm okay with the C, assuming we go back in January. I'm okay with just kind of, sucking it up, doing this just through the fall to get through it and sending them back in January. I think we could do that. Much longer would be really, really rough. And that alone will be rough because we're already roughing it.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting to happen. I'm in higher ed and just trying to figure out what we're doing at the college level. I really thank you for providing that. We're going to find out in the next month what happens. We're going to see. I mean, it's coming, and it's coming fast. We're already in July. We started this quarantine in March 3 months ago. So it has went by like that for a lot of people, and it's going to be really scary and interesting, and I hope everything works out. So I just want to thank you for coming and providing the parent perspective, because I think it's something that we need to hear more from. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I gave some insight for my own little world, but I know a lot of people are in the same boat, and it has not been easy. So props to all the moms out there, and thank you for taking the time.
All right, thanks. Have a good day.
Okay, take care.